This is the Dog Savant Podcast with your host, Brett Endies.
Hello and welcome to the Dog Savant Podcast. Today is episode 64. My name is Brett Endies. I am your host. I am a Los Angeles-based dog trainer. The purpose of this podcast is to further your understanding of dogs and their behavior. As a professional dog trainer, I like to share my experiences, my accumulated knowledge, and share what works in the real world to hopefully help you if you are not able to find quality dog training, you've been failed by the purely positive movement. If you're a client or just somebody who wants to supplement the training you're already doing, this podcast is for you. The purpose also is to share my life, give you more insight to what it's like to be a Los Angeles dog trainer or a dog trainer, so hopefully you can appreciate that as well. As I always do, I always ask you to please share, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, all that stuff. I find that we've got about 12 reviews and counting, and I've been running the analytics, and I think there are a few more people listening to this show than it seems, and I'd like to hear from you. The other day, I think I was like the number 2 or something family and pet or something podcast in Russia. I think I was number 23 pet podcast in the US, which is completely impossible because I'm getting barely any feedback. I know you're listening, so if you are, just send me a quick email and let me know that you exist. It really motivates me to want to keep doing these. If I have an audience, I will even give you more content. I don't want to profit off this. Like I said, at some point I'm going to probably sell you a book or something that I have to offer, but I really just want to spread the word. I want to be able to share the information that I do individually with people and their dogs on a greater scale, so hopefully in this time on the planet, I can influence more people to help them help their dogs. Okay, so please do that. I would love to hear from you. And also send in your questions. My email is dogtrainingla@gmail.com. And I will respond either personally or I will respond to your questions on a future podcast episode. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? I'm actually headed out of town first thing in the morning. I've got a 5 a.m. flight out to Denver to see my daughter. As some of you know, I split my time between California and Colorado. I lived a good portion of my adult life in Colorado, and that is more or less my home, even though Los Angeles is where I reside and run a business. I see myself as a dual resident of both locations. So we're doing that tomorrow. It's been a busy week. I've been back and forth all over the place. I was in Montana a couple weeks ago. I was in Las Vegas a few days ago. Just really moving, loving it. Trying to create a little bit more of the life that I've worked really hard to carve out for myself. So I'm doing a little bit more for me, more for my girlfriend. We have a good relationship, and I want to be able to share more experiences with her. And at 45, I finally have a healthy, good relationship, and I want to enjoy it while I still have time on the planet. Okay, so that's what's been going on this week. So I'm in traffic. We just had dinner. I'm on the west side, and I live in the northern part of the valley. So if you're familiar with Los Angeles, you know that right now it's about 8 o'clock on a Thursday. It's going to take a while to get home, so I figured I'd use this time to do my podcast. And that is why, for anyone who is new to this, hears background noise, the production quality isn't so great. As long as you can hear my voice, you can take the information and use it to help your dog. And if you don't like it, make your own podcast, or you can pay for a producer, and I will give you a better production value. Okay, so keeping on moving, let's think about what we're going to do. Sometimes I do not have a plan. Like this was just, let's hit record and let's talk while we're in traffic. So we're stream of consciousing it. And I'm going to have to literally, while I'm talking to you, figure out what we're going to talk about for the next 10, 15 or so minutes to fill up some podcast space. Let's see, what did we go? Oh, I know what I'll talk about. I touched on it even in last episode in one of the Q&As about resistance to a crate. Maybe I'll give a little more insight, and I've talked about it in other episodes, but I want to maybe just devote the subject for the next few minutes to just that. Most dogs, when introduced properly at a young enough age, will see a crate as a positive thing. They like time off the clock, they like a sensory-deprived space, and they like their own space. They're denning animals. They like to feel secure. They like to feel like they have coverage on all sides. These are all reasons why dogs will acclimate, not even acclimate, will take to a crate instinctively. And sometimes even when they're not in a crate, you'll find that they enjoy being under things. They like being in corners against things. Most dogs do not like just being right smack dab in the middle of somewhere. They like to be tucked off because it gives them security and more of that sensory deprivation. That's what hibernation is. They get in the ground, the bear tucks away and tunes out the world for a period of time till they're ready to wake up and live life again. So dogs can go into little hibernation states throughout the day, and that's ideal, right? When people call me, they're not in an ideal situation. You got a dog that's a little more independent and doesn't like being told where to go and being stuck in a crate without having their independent movements always manifested and their impulses working, throughout the day because they're stuck. Some dogs live life at the point where you need to start using a crate, whether it be for potty training or to create more structure or if you're dealing with separation anxiety. And some of these dogs, that's where you get more of the protest or the more straightforward information that you might be reading online about how to introduce a dog to a crate and acclimate them to it and feed them in it and put treats in with the door open and let them go in on their own, then slowly close the door, then slowly leave them alone for longer periods of time. Sure, that would be great if every dog took to it like that, but it's not always what's going to happen. And even with a puppy, sometimes it's not what's going to happen. So as I've talked about, we have to figure out, well, what's going to make a dog tolerate the confinement, control, and lack of options that a crate represents. Usually it's going to be creating more structure, control, order, and lack of options when they're out of the crate via basic training, leadership, structure, place training, just putting life on your terms. So when you ask them to go into a box for a couple hours for whatever reason, they're not going to be so quick to protest. That takes some time and convincing, and while you're working on it, you may have a dog that's going to be resisting the crate. So what are some of the common complaints that people give me? And a lot of them are valid. Like the biggest one is like, I'm afraid my dog's going to get hurt in the process trying to get out of the crate while they learn that getting out isn't going to get them anywhere, so that they can learn to accept and be comfortable. Right, so from the point where we start the crate training introduction to where they actually learn to see it as acceptable and they can tolerate it without the reaction, but we have a journey ahead of us. So sometimes just the nature of the crate isn't going to work. A lot of those the open air crates that are very popular, they're very simple because they're not expensive and they fold up. They can be the worst thing because they don't let a dog settle. They feel like they're still in the open, yet they have this bar barrier, and also the width of the bars, they can get their teeth in them, they can grab them with their claws, their nails. I don't find those to be the most beneficial. What I really like an owner to start with, even if it's a dog and you're just potty training a puppy, it's to use more of the enclosed, the plastic, they call them the Vera kennels sometimes. They're the kind you'd see on an airplane. Those tend to be sturdier. They're a lot calmer for the dog because they're in enclosed space without that open air. There's less moving parts. It doesn't give. If a dog tries to fight and resist or escape from a crate and they feel that there's some weak spots, that's what they're going to work on. It's like the prisoner who's always just with one scoop of the spoon a day, and in 10 years they're going to escape, and that's what happens. As soon as they find a weak part, they start going for it. Whether it be the latch, the bars, the well that you have on the corners, that all has to be taken into account of, with some time on their hand, these dogs, especially with separation anxiety, are going to go to town and they could get hurt. And in the best case scenario, even if they don't get hurt, they're going to learn that if they keep fighting, they're going to get out of that crate or make some headway to do so. And that's going to keep this fight going, the perpetuation of the anxiety, instead of accepting that they're in the crate, everything's going to be fine, and then they learn to tolerate it as just another part of their life. And if all their needs are met, they should see it as just, well, now I got a little downtime, I'm going to hibernate for a couple hours, no biggie. That's if a dog is balanced, content, has learned to see it like that. So we want to go to a more solid crate. Now, some dogs, whether they be powerful or their anxiety is strong or they're very willful, they could even do some work on these Vera kennels. So you may have to get something that's more secure. They have, it's called Rough Tough Kennels is a brand. They have Gunner Kennels. They have, what's the other one? I always keep forgetting, you guys. Impact dog crates, those are metal. They're more like a dog box. Sometimes you got to watch for any kind of welds where there's an edge that a dog can get their skin or their nose rubbed on. But generally the more sturdy crates, the ones that are promoted as being better for escape artists or anxiety, or they're more durable, or they're better for, like, if you have them in a car, they're going to pass a crash or rollover test. Those are going to be generally more sturdy for dogs that are going to be making, having at it as far as trying to escape from their kennel. I talked in the last episode, there's things you can do to even doctor up the regular Vera kennel if your dog isn't too severe and you're on a budget. You can do things like you can put a piece of plexiglass or a lucite type of cover in the front of the grate. If they keep grabbing at the wire gate opening, it'll just make it a smoother surface. There's things that you can do to reinforce. Some people will even put, if the dog is trying to pop it or work through the side, they'll either build something to go around it, or they'll even use like tie-down straps that you'd use for like supporting things in the back of a truck, and it just keeps the crate more sturdy. The other thing, sometimes the dogs, when they feel they can move and shake the crate, it's hard for them to stop that attempt. So if sometimes you have to tie the crate or tether it to something so there's no movement in it, just the actual crate moving, let alone the ability for a dog to escape. So all these things you have to work through if your dog is tough. So what do I tell people? As long as your dog cannot get hurt in the process and you can handle what's going on and you're doing all of the preliminary training and structure and you've taken all the time to ease a dog into it, at that point the dog has to just figure it out on their own and let them have a tantrum, let them act like they're going to die, and when it's all over, each time they learn, it's going to get easier and easier. Now, you have to have good timing. So if your dog is freaking out, unless there's nothing else you can do and it's never going to stop, you do not want to let your dog out of the crate until they're calm. So they learn that by not making a big stink, they're going to be quicker to get out, right? It's still reverse psychology, and then through that they learn to just be calmer, and then it becomes a non-issue. So be careful of that, because a lot of times we feel, well, how long can my dog do it? It could be an hour. These dogs are not going to traumatize or become traumatized by something that they're doing to themselves unless there's going to be some kind of physical harm involved. And that's why we're talking about making sure your crate is secure and you're doing everything possible to get your dog to acclimate and accept the crate right when you start pushing it. So it's minimizing the amount of resistance or tantrums or stress associated. But I talk about this all the time. For anything, humans, dogs, a plant to grow, there needs to be a certain amount of stress placed upon it for them to come out the other side stronger, better, improved, or work through an issue. Right? And that's what people want to do. It's like, oh, the dog's going to get traumatized by being in the crate. No, it's not. Absolutely not, because every dog before them that has a balanced mind can see it as just another secure, confined place for them. This dog has issues that prohibits that, and we've got to get him to see the light. Absolutely, there is going to be a certain amount of stress placed on that dog to get him to be able to see it on the other side. But then once you get through it, it could be a few weeks to a month, the rest of their life, they're content. They don't see minimal things that are absolutely nothing as a major ordeal that means their life needs are going to be at stake. That is sad to me. That's why I don't care about a little bit of an owner not liking to hear their dog fuss and whine and scratch at the door when they're in a crate, because I know that giving into the way the owner feels about it and they don't like it or they don't want to upset the neighbors or what they think, that's their own needs getting met, not accommodating the dog's growth and the dog's needs, right? And that's why I have to get a little demanding with people when they keep calling me over. I'm like, just keep doing it and call me in a week when your dog is over it, because I've been through this literally 1,001 times with clients, and it is always the same thing. Once we get the crate shored up, we're making sure the owner is implementing structure and leadership, the dog's getting exercise, the dog is off the meds, and the dog is seeing things very clearly and consciously, they always figure it out on their own. It's just a matter of letting time take its course and having the right environment and crate and order set up in a way that is black and white enough for the dog to see that this is the new regiment that's going to guide them to get their needs met, not their agenda, not their anxiety, not their insecurities, which all we do is coddle and perpetuate, because in our world nowadays, we are so blind to addressing what's going on. I do, and that's why I get some good results when I work with a dog and an owner, but I am upfront when someone calls me that we're going to have to talk about reality. We're not living in a delusional fantasy world that all these rescues and all of the pet supply companies, they want to pander to you because they want you to spend your money on their thing, even if it's not necessarily best for the dog. I'm going to tell you the reality, and I would rather you say, well, I don't like you. You're too honest. You're too blunt. You're not telling me what I want to hear. Very good. I bid you farewell, and I shall go on to the next person who exists in reality with their dog. It's sad. That's why I do this podcast, because I hope I can help more people that unfortunately there's some people that they're never able to help, so I can put that information out to people that will hear what I'm saying. If you resonate with this, or this podcast resonates with you, I would assume you're a half rational person, and I can be a wackadoo. I'm well aware of that. But when it comes to dogs, you got to see what's really going on, both in yourself and them, and take your bullshit out of the equation as far as the emotions, and help your dog, or help the dog you're working with. If you're a rescue, or you're a trainer, or you're a veterinarian you're not emotional. You know what you're doing? You're trying to be liked. There's a lot of people in the pet profession, they're going to sell you on this whole, like, oh, these poor dogs, of course you've got to give them a safe space and love them and treats, because you want to be seen by the owners or the people paying you your salary as such a good, kind, compassionate person. You know how I sleep good at night? I'm a good, kind, compassionate person because I'm willing to be called an asshole because I'm bluntly honest with people, telling them what they really need to help their dogs. And enough unrelated people have told me, as I always say, that information works, and they're always appreciating me being bluntly honest and telling them to get with the fucking program. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I always go off on a tangent. I don't know if we covered every base with the kennel. More or less, to sum it up, if your dog has an issue with the kennel and you need to introduce it because your dog has separation anxiety, it's a new puppy, or you're working on potty training, or your dog just needs more downtime, you need to work on what's causing that resistance. And a lot of times it's too much independence when they're out free, not in the crate. And then you have to do some place training. You have to create some structure, order, boundaries, and leadership. And then the crate will be something that becomes more acceptable to them. And with that, then you start doing the crate work, and you're going to have to tune it out and be skillful in understanding where your dog is at. If your dog is really a hard fighter in that crate, you're going to have to invest in a more secure version of it. Okay, that's just how it is. You got the dog, you're going to have to go, and you can find a used one online, but some people want to, they want to bargain with me, and I'm like, look, this is what your dog needs. It's not about reinventing a wheel. It's about doing what's worked for those before us and now letting it work for you. And that's why crate training is an age-old standard in dog training, and it works. And anyone will call me and they say, I won't use a crate, or I think a crate's mean, or after I explain it to them and I walk them through and they still can't see what's really going on or do the work, I would love to, but there's really not much I can do for them. All right, so podcast got a little salty towards the end here. Stream of consciousness, guys. I really hope I'll listen to it usually after I record it, right? And I hope it makes sense. My girlfriend, she'll do a once over because she's the one who uploads this for me, and she'll always just tell me, if I've been a little too much or if I made sense. But she loves me, so maybe she'll tell me I make sense when I don't, or I make sense to her because somehow the way I am resonates with her and not always with everyone else, as we saw in the social media community a couple weeks ago. Now I'm just rambling. So let's see, headed to Colorado. I'm excited for that. Stay tuned. I'll probably be there a little more often as time goes on. Coming into LA a couple times a month to see my clients. Spend a little more time with my daughter as she enters high school. She'll be 14 in a couple weeks. If you ever listen to this when you're older, happy birthday, sweetie. I love you. And that's about it. I'm really, I got a podcast out. Look at that. About halfway home. Back in the valley now, and I thank you all for listening. And yes, do not forget, I'm calling you out. I'm gonna find out who you are, and I'm gonna get your IP address. I'm gonna email you personally. Hey, you listen to my podcast. Tell me that you're listening, because I don't know. I see 12 reviews for like the past 6 months, and that's great. I love them. Thank you to the 12 of you who did it. But if there's 12 more of you, do it. Let's see it. Let me know. Even if subscribe, but also if you just let me know, it makes me happy. You don't realize that, but it really does. All right, everyone. Thanks again. It's been episode 64 of the Dog Savant Podcast. Train your dog. Get out there with your dog. Crate train your dog. Live a nice, balanced life. Have a good night, everyone.